The day I learned my children were trying to have me declared incompetent was Tuesday. I received an email notification for a family strategy meeting they'd scheduled on my calendar. I knew they were planning to take everything from me. I was already 3 steps ahead, plotting a justice they never expected, a justice that would chain them to the very empire they were trying to steal. If you're ready for this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this a like so you don't miss the updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always lovely to see where everyone is. Let me back up a little. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 66 years old, and I am the founder and CEO of Vance Vintage Kitchens. We started out as a small antique sourcing company I ran from my garage, and we're now one of the leading names in bespoke kitchen design in the country. We take 100-year-old wood, reclaimed fixtures, bits of American history, and turn them into the heart of a home. This company isn't just a business to me, it's my 3rd child. I built it with my own 2 hands, with scraped knuckles and sleepless nights, long after my husband passed away and I had 2 actual children to raise. Those 2 children, Mark and Jennifer, are now 41 and 38. They've worked for the company since they graduated college. Mark is head of sales, charming, slick, with a smile that could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves, as my mother used to say. Jennifer is in operations, meticulous, organized, a master of spreadsheets and logistics. On the surface, they were the perfect heirs. Everyone said how lucky I was, how seamless the transition would be when I finally decided to retire to some beach with a book and a fruity drink. The thing is, I wasn't ready to retire. I loved my work. I loved the smell of reclaimed barnwood, the thrill of finding a perfect set of 1920s brass bin pulls, the look on a client's face when they saw their dream kitchen come to life. Why would I give that up? But for the last couple of years, the hints from Mark and Jen had gotten heavier and heavier. "Mom, you look tired. Maybe you should take that trip to Tuscany you've been talking about." "Don't worry about the quarterly reports, Mom. We've got it." It started out sounding like concern, like love, but gradually the tone began to change. It became patronizing. If I misplaced my reading glasses, something I've done every day of my life since I was 45, Jen would give Mark this look. You know the one? The tight-lipped, sad little smile that says, "Oh, poor old thing." About 6 months ago, I was in a design meeting and blanked on a supplier's name. It was right on the tip of my tongue. A small family outfit in Vermont that makes the most beautiful slate countertops. My mind went completely blank for a solid 10 seconds. It was embarrassing, sure, but it happens. Later that day, I heard Mark talking to Jennifer in the hallway. He just froze, he said, his voice low and syrupy with false concern. In front of the whole Henderson design team. It was bad, Jenny, really bad. I leaned back from my desk, out of sight, and listened. My heart started to beat that slow, heavy rhythm it gets when I know something is wrong. "We have to do something, Mark," Jennifer whispered back, "before she makes a mistake that actually hurts the company. You know what Dad said about protecting the legacy." Using my dead husband against me. A new low, even for them. Frank didn't build this company. I did. He supported me, God rest his soul, but he was a history professor. He thought a P&L statement was a PL type of sandwich. They were twisting my narrative, recasting me from the formidable founder into a dotty old woman who needed to be put out to pasture. They started small. They'd helpfully follow up on my emails. They'd call my key clients just to check in. At our weekly management meeting, if I paused to gather my thoughts, Mark would jump in and finish my sentence, patting my hand like I was a child. He'd say, "What Mom is trying to say is," and then steer the conversation in the direction he wanted it to go. I let them. I wanted to see how far they'd take it. Every time they patted my hand or exchanged one of those looks, they were showing their cards. And I was taking meticulous notes. And just when he thought he had me backed into a corner, he forgot who he was dealing with. Stick with me, because you'll want to see how this plays out. The real tipping point came when they hired an executive assistant for me without my permission. Her name was Brenda, a young woman, probably 25, all business school jargon and bright, empty smiles. Her real job, I quickly figured out, was to be my minder. She managed my calendar with an iron fist. Suddenly, my schedule was full of low-stress tasks and review meetings. Any high-level negotiation or a new client pitch, magically I had a scheduling conflict, usually a doctor's appointment I knew nothing about. Brenda kept a detailed log. I saw it once when she left her laptop open. It was a minute-by-minute account of my day with little editorial notes. 10:25 a.m. Eleanor seemed confused about the new server password. Needed assistance. 2:40 p.m. Misplaced specs for the Peterson project. Found them on her desk 5 minutes later. They were building a case, a pathetic, flimsy case, but a case nonetheless. I wasn't just going to sit there and let my own children dismantle my life's work and my identity. I am not a fool. I might forget a password once in a while, but my mind is as sharp as a tack. I knew I needed my own team, my own information. So I did what any good CEO would do. I engaged in a little corporate espionage. My first call was to George, my lawyer for 30 years, and Frank's best friend. I took him to lunch, somewhere we wouldn't be seen. Before the breadsticks even arrived, I laid it all out. George just listened, his face getting stonier by the second.
"Ellie, are you sure?" he asked when I was done. "They're documenting every time I sneeze, George," I told him. "They think I'm losing it. Either that or they want to make it look like I am." He put his fork down. "Let me make a few calls. I have a friend who specializes in delicate family business matters. Don't let on that you know anything. Just keep playing the part of the slightly dotty, beloved founder they think you are." Playing the part wasn't hard. I started forgetting things on purpose. I'd show up to a meeting a few minutes late looking flustered. I'd ask Jennifer to repeat the quarterly numbers, saying, "Oh, my mind is just like a sieve these days." I saw the triumphant looks they'd give each other over my head. They thought they were winning. They thought their poor, aging mother was making it easy for them. Let them think that. Pride, as they say, goeth before a fall, and the fall I had planned for them was going to be epic. While they were busy documenting my every imagined stumble, I was preparing for war. Georgia's specialist, a woman named Miss Alvarez, who was sharper than a shard of glass, advised me on my next steps. We did a full, private, cognitive and neurological exam with a top doctor at the State University's medical center. Not some quack they could pay off. The results came back stellar. "Cognitively in the top 5% for your age group," the doctor said with a smile. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I had my baseline. I had my proof. Next, I had my IT guy, a young man named Kevin who I'd paid for his college certification classes, do a quiet sweep. I asked him to install a keystroke logger on my own office computer. A bit sneaky, I know, but I needed to know exactly what my assistant, Brenda, was writing about me. I also had him pull server logs, and that's when I found it. It was a file, buried deep in a folder labeled HR Archival, created by Jennifer. It was a business proposal, a 5-year plan for Vance Vintage Kitchens. It detailed a complete corporate restructuring, a rebranding to Vance & Co., notice the singular, and a new board of directors. The new CEO was listed as Mark Vance, President of Operations, Jennifer Vance, and my name? It was on the last page under a section titled Founder's Legacy. It outlined a generous retirement package and the naming of a new line of budget-friendly cabinets in my honor, the Eleanor Collection. They were turning me into a cabinet line. Reading that document, a cold fury settled into my bones. This wasn't about concern for my health. This was a coup, plain and simple. They'd been planning it for years. My forgetfulness wasn't the cause. It was just the excuse they'd been waiting for. They thought I was a relic, an old photograph on the wall. They'd forgotten that I was the one who built the damn wall and I could just as easily tear it down. The family strategy meeting alert popped up again on my phone screen. It was in the main conference room. Just me, Mark, Jen, and a fourth person they'd invited, a Dr. Anya Sharma. I did a quick search. She was a geriatric psychologist specializing in capacity assessments. That's when the email from Brenda arrived with the final agenda. My heart turned to ice. They weren't just staging a corporate coup. They were coming for my freedom. I walked into that conference room on Tuesday at 10 a.m. sharp. Our main conference room is my pride and joy. The table is a single slab of reclaimed hemlock from a 19th century Pennsylvania barn, polished to a warm glow. The walls are lined with pictures of our most beautiful projects. It is a room built on success, on history, on my history, and they were using it as an execution chamber. Mark, Jennifer, and the psychologist, Dr. Sharma, were already seated. They stood up when I came in, a pantomime of respect that was almost comical. Mark rushed to pull out my chair at my table. "Mom, thanks for coming," he started, his voice oozing a buttery concern that turned my stomach. "This is Dr. Sharma. We asked her to join us just to mediate, keep things productive." Dr. Sharma was a woman about my age, with kind eyes and a professional but wary expression. She had no idea she was a pawn in their little game. I gave her a warm, slightly frail smile. "A doctor? Am I dying and nobody told me?" I said, with a light little laugh. Jennifer flinched. "She hates it when I make jokes about my own mortality." "Of course not, Mom. Please, sit." I sat, placing my leather-bound notebook and a pen on the table in front of me. It was the same notebook I'd used for 30 years. They probably thought it was just a prop, another sign of my analog brain in a digital world. They launched into their carefully rehearsed speeches. It started with love. Oh, so much love. How much they admired me, how much they'd learned from me. Then came the concerns. They brought up the supplier's name I'd forgotten. They mentioned the time I'd mixed up the dates for a shipment to Dallas. They had a list, a pathetic little list of minor, normal human errors that they presented as a mountain of evidence of my decline. "And Brenda has mentioned you seem overwhelmed lately, that you're having trouble with the new software," Jennifer added, twisting the knife. I let them talk for 20 minutes. I nodded. I looked at my hands. I sighed a few times. I played the part of a woman being confronted with a truth she can't face. I could see them relaxing. They thought this was going to be easy. Finally, Dr. Sharma spoke, her voice gentle. "Eleanor," she said, leaning forward, "Mark and Jennifer are worried. They've proposed we consider a capacity assessment. It's a simple process, a series of conversations and tests, just to get a baseline of your cognitive health, to make sure you have the support you need." This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for, the kill shot. I looked from my son's smug, pitying face to my daughter's teary, self-righteous one. I took a deep breath, and then I smiled. It wasn't a frail smile this time. This one was all business.
"An excellent idea," I said, my voice clear and strong. The shift in tone made all three of them sit up a little straighter. I agree that the mental capacity of the leadership of this company is of the utmost importance, which is why I had a full neurological and cognitive workup done 3 weeks ago. I reached into my briefcase, pulled out a file folder, and slid it across the gleaming hemlock table to Dr. Sharma. "There's a copy for you, Doctor. From Dr. Albright at the University Medical Center. You'll find I tested in the 95th percentile for my age group in all major cognitive markers, including executive function and long-term memory recall. In fact, Dr. Albright suggested I take up teaching a master's class." I know this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious.
The silence in the room was deafening. Mark's jaw literally dropped. Jennifer just stared, her face white. Dr. Sharma opened the folder, and her eyebrows shot up as she read the first page. "Now," I said, leaning forward and folding my hands on the table, "let's talk about your capacity to run this company." Because while I was being tested, I also did a little testing of my own. I turned to Jennifer first. "Jenny, honey, let's talk about the Vance & Co. proposal, the 5-year plan you drafted on your company computer during company hours and saved on the company server." I slid another folder onto the table. This one landed with a heavier thud. It was a printout of the entire proposal, including the part about the Eleanor collection of budget cabinets. Jennifer looked like she'd been struck by lightning. She couldn't speak. Her mouth opened and closed silently. Then I turned to Mark. "And Mark, let's talk about Brenda, the assistant you hired using company funds. An assistant whose primary duty, according to the logs from the keylogger I had installed on my own computer, was not to assist me, but to spy on me, to build a fraudulent case for my removal, a clear misuse of corporate resources. Our lawyer, George, finds that part particularly interesting." Mark went from pale to a blotchy red. You spied on us?" "No, darling," I said, my voice sweet as poison. "I conducted an internal audit to address a credible threat against the CEO, which in this case happened to be my own children. You see, you've been so busy documenting every time I misplaced my glasses that you completely failed to notice that I was building a comprehensive file on your conspiracy." Dr. Sharma, to her immense credit, closed the folder in front of her, stood up, and addressed my children. "My role here is to assess and assist. It is not to participate in a corporate takeover. It seems Eleanor is more than capable. My services are clearly not needed." She gave me a firm nod of respect, turned, and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind her. She sent me a bill later for her time, which I paid gladly. Now it was just the 3 of us, the family. What do you want, Mom?" Jennifer whispered. She was crying now, real tears. "Want?" I let the question hang in the air. "What I've always wanted. For this company, my company, to be a legacy, a real one, not a brand name on cheap cabinets. I don't want your apologies. They're worthless. I don't want your excuses. They're boring. What I want is restitution." I slid a final set of documents across the table. They were thick, bound in blue legal covers. "These are your new employment contracts," I explained. "You both seem very concerned with protecting the Vance legacy. Wonderful. You're going to protect it with your blood, sweat, and tears for the rest of your working lives, right here, under my direct and unequivocal leadership." Mark started to sputter. You can't be serious. We'll quit." "Oh, but you won't," I said calmly, "because if you quit, 2 things will happen. 1, I will fire you for cause, for conspiracy to defraud the company and oust the CEO. Your resumes will be radioactive waste. No one in this industry will touch you. 2, I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I will immediately restructure my estate. Your inheritance, the family trust, everything my father and I built will be funneled into a charitable foundation. You'll get $1 each, enough to make it legally binding. Your children will get nothing. You want to see the legacy you were so concerned about vanish? Just try me."
They stared at the contracts as if they were venomous snakes. "The contracts are ironclad," I continued. "They give you your current salaries, no raises, no bonuses without my personal approval for truly exemplary performance. Your titles are stripped, Mark, you're no longer head of sales. You're an account manager. You'll be handling the Dakotas territory by phone. Jennifer, you're no longer president of operations. You're a logistics coordinator. You will oversee shipping and receiving. On the night shift. You will both report directly to me. Your contracts include a non-compete clause so vicious it would make a shark weep. And they are lifetime contracts. They terminate upon your retirement or my death, whichever comes first. I stood up, pushing my chair back. The scraping sound echoed in the silent room. You tried to put me in a cage. Instead, you built one for yourselves. You have until 5 o'clock to sign. If those aren't on my desk, George has his instructions. I walked to the door and paused, my hand on the handle. I looked back at their shattered faces. Oh, and one more thing. Welcome to the rest of your lives. I hope you make me proud. That meeting felt like the climax of a movie, didn't it? The dramatic reveal, the villain's downfall. But let me tell you, the credits don't roll right after. Real life is messier. The aftermath, the day-to-day of living with your choices, that's where the real story unfolds. They signed the contracts, of course. Just before 5 o'clock, my new assistant, a fiercely loyal woman in her late 60s named Carol, who I'd hired myself, brought the documents to my office. Jennifer's signature was shaky, smudged with what I could only assume was a tear. Mark's was an angry, jagged slash of ink. The first few weeks were, well, they were awful. The silence in the office was so thick, you could have carved it into one of our custom countertops. The employees knew something had happened. Rumors were flying. Did you hear Mark got moved to a cubicle by the loading bay? Jennifer's parking spot is gone. My management team, the people who had worked with me for decades, looked at me with a mixture of fear and awe. They knew a battle had been won, but they weren't sure what the new regime would look like. My first order of business was to stabilize the ship. I called an all-hands meeting. I stood up in front of all 120 of my employees, from the master carpenters to the IT guys. I told them that Vance Vintage Kitchens was entering a new era of growth, and to facilitate this, we were restructuring some roles to better leverage our core talent. It was all very corporate, very calm. I didn't mention the coup. I didn't need to. I just needed everyone to feel secure. Then I laid out my new vision, a premier line of ultra-high-end designs, an expansion into reclaimed architectural elements for entire homes, a partnership with a historic preservation society. I was energized, I was focused, and I made damn sure everyone saw it. I wanted them to see their CEO wasn't a frail old lady, but a formidable leader with a clear path forward. Then there was Mark, my charming, slick son. He thought he could outsmart the new system. He tried to handle his new Dakotas territory from his old corner office. On his second day, I had security and maintenance pack up his things in a cardboard box and move them to a beige cubicle with a sticky drawer and a view of the dumpsters. He got the message. For the first time in his life, he had to make cold calls. He had to build a client list from scratch. He was no longer Mark Vance, the heir apparent. He was just another salesman, and not a very good one at that. He lost his first 3 potential clients because his heart wasn't in it. His arrogance got in the way. He came to my office at the end of the second week. He didn't knock, just barged in, his face flushed with anger. "This is humiliating, Mom. You're trying to destroy me." I looked up from the quarterly budget reports. "No, Mark," I said calmly. "I am not destroying you. I am teaching you. For 41 years, you've been playing life on easy mode. You got the job because of your name. You got the promotions because of your name. You never had to actually earn anything. You thought the company was your birthright. It is not. It is my legacy, and a legacy must be earned. Welcome to day 1 of earning it."
He just stared at me, speechless. "Now I believe you have a sales report to file. It was due an hour ago. Don't be late again." He turned and stormed out, slamming the door. The satisfaction I felt was cold and hard, like a piece of Vermont slate. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Jennifer's punishment was different, more insidious in a way. She's a creature of order, of control. Losing her title, her office, her authority, that was like taking away the air she breathed. But the night shift, that was the master stroke. Her first night, I stayed late. I sat in my office with the lights off, watching. She arrived at 10 p.m., just as the cleaning crews were finishing up. The warehouse, which is a bustling hub of activity during the day, is a vast, echoing, lonely place at night. Her job was to oversee the late-night freight arrivals, check the manifests, and ensure everything was logged correctly for the morning crews. It was vital work, yes, but it was isolating. It was anonymous. I watched her on the security monitors. She looked so small in the huge space. She moved with a stiff, uncertain gait. This was my daughter, who used to chair meetings, who commanded a team of 15 people. Now, her only co-workers were a couple of forklift drivers who mostly ignored her. About 2 in the morning, I saw her sit down on a wooden crate, put her face in her hands, and just sob. A part of me, the mother part that is buried deep, deep down, ached. It was a horrible sight. But then I remembered her sitting at that conference table, ready to strip me of my life, my identity, my freedom. And the ache subsided. This wasn't cruelty. This was consequences. The world had coddled them. Their name had protected them. I was doing them a favor, really. I was introducing them to the real world. A little late, perhaps, but better late than never. They tried to find loopholes, of course. Mark hired a lawyer to review his contract. The lawyer told him it was the most brutally one-sided but legally airtight document he'd ever seen. He told Mark he could fight it, spend $100,000 in legal fees, and would lose. Then he'd be fired, and his mother would disinherit him. He advised him to just do the work. Jennifer tried to appeal to my softer side. She started leaving little things on my desk, a family photo from when they were kids, a copy of a book I knew I loved. She'd send me these pleading, pathetic emails in the middle of the night from the warehouse. "Thinking of you, Mom. Hope you're resting." I never replied. I let Carol, my assistant, file them away. My softer side had taken a permanent vacation. The most shocking part of this whole affair, however, wasn't what they did, but who helped them. Remember Brenda, the assistant turned spy? After I fired her, I asked Kevin, my IT whiz, to do a deep dive on her email history. And that's when I saw it. The money trail. My children hadn't paid for her services. She'd been hired by a consulting firm. And who owned that firm? My brother-in-law, Thomas. My late husband's younger brother. Uncle Thomas. The man who sat at my Thanksgiving table every year, ate my turkey, drank my wine, and told me how much he admired my strength and business acumen. He had been working with Mark and Jennifer for over a year, advising them, helping them build their fraudulent case against me. He was the one who recommended Dr. Sharma. His firm was paid a handsome consulting fee by my company, authorized by Mark, for market research. All along, he was the snake in the garden. And this betrayal, in some ways, cut even deeper than what my children had done. They were young, greedy, entitled. Thomas was my contemporary, my family, the man who gave a tearful eulogy at my funeral. Discovering his involvement changed the game. This was no longer just about teaching my children a lesson. This was about defending my fortress from a coordinated attack on all fronts. My brother-in-law had made a critical mistake. He had messed with my money, my company. And he had no idea that I now had him dead to rights. I picked up the phone and called George, my lawyer. "George?" I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "I think it's time we talk about Thomas, and I think the IRS might be very interested in our conversation."
George practically growled through the phone when I told him about Thomas. That no-good, gravy-staining. I never trusted him, Ellie. Not since Frank's funeral, when he asked me what your estate looked like. It was a small detail I had long forgotten, but it suddenly clicked into place. Thomas had always seen me, not as a sister-in-law, but as a walking bank account with a finite lifespan. "So what's the plan?" I asked, pacing my office. The righteous anger I felt was like a shot of adrenaline. "I want him ruined, George, professionally and financially." "Ruined we can do," George said, his voice now sounding gleeful. "This is why I love George. He's a bulldog. We don't go to the IRS first. That's a sledgehammer, and we need a scalpel. First, we hire our own forensic accountant, a shark. We have him go through every transaction between Vance Kitchens and Thomas's little consulting firm for the past 5 years. Every invoice, every expense report Mark ever signed off on. We build an airtight case for felony fraud. Once we have that, we own him. We get to decide whether to turn him over to the authorities or simply collect." The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. We hired a piranha of an accountant named Mr. Petroff, a man who looked like he counted beans for fun and found joy only in the misery of others. He set up shop in a spare office and began to dig. While he worked, I focused on the business. And my children? They were learning the true meaning of the phrase, to reap what you sow. Mark's performance in the Dakotas was abysmal. His reports were late. His sales numbers were a joke. He'd spend his days trying to call his old contacts looking for sympathy or a new job, only to find that his non-compete was so notoriously brutal that no one would risk talking to him. I was getting reports back from old friends in the industry. My son was begging for a lifeline, and everyone was turning him away. They didn't want to be on my bad side. Word had gotten out, Eleanor Vance was not to be trifled with. Jennifer, on the other hand, was a mystery. For the first month, she was a ghost. She'd come in, do her job with a quiet, sullen efficiency, and leave. But then something shifted. I noticed it in the nightly warehouse logs. They became more detailed. She added notes. Forklift 3 has a hydraulic leak. Should be serviced to prevent pallet damage. Observed a 15-minute delay on all outgoing shipments due to bottleneck at Bay 2. Recommend rerouting inbound deliveries to Bay 4 between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. She was doing the job. She was actually thinking. She was using that meticulous spreadsheet-loving brain of hers for its intended purpose. It was intriguing, but I remained wary. A leopard doesn't change its spots overnight. About a month into his audit, Mr. Petroff called me into his office. He had spreadsheets projected on the wall that made my eyes cross, but the conclusion was simple. "It's worse than you thought," he said with a chilling smile. "Your brother-in-law wasn't just skimming. He and your son were running a classic kickback scheme. Thomas would inflate an invoice for his consulting services, Mark would approve it, and then Thomas would kick back about 30% of the overage to Mark's personal account." He pointed to a series of transfers, over $200,000 in the last 18 months alone. "It's not just a civil matter, Mrs. Vance. This is wire fraud and embezzlement. It carries jail time." I looked at the numbers, the trail of deceit. This was the money that paid for Mark's fancy sports car and the down payment on his new house. Money from my company. Money I bled for. I think Mr. Petroff told him to package everything into a neat, terrifying file, and then I went home and planned a dinner party. Just a small one. For 3. I know what you're thinking, but this is where it gets really interesting. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and mine was about to be served on my best china. I invited Thomas over for dinner that Saturday. I told him I wanted to clear the air and reconnect for Frank's sake. He accepted immediately, his voice practically dripping with phony relief. He probably thought I'd uncovered the consulting fees and was going to give him a slap on the wrist. He arrived with a ridiculously expensive bottle of wine and a pot of orchids, acting the part of the concerned brother.
We sat in my formal dining room. I let him talk through the appetizers. He spoke about his grief over my difficult situation with the children. He praised my courage. He was laying it on so thick, I thought I might drown in it. Then, for the main course,
I served him his own ruin. You know, Thomas, I began, swirling the wine in my glass, I've been doing some financial housekeeping lately, and I found the most fascinating accounting anomaly. I reached beside me and placed Mr. Petrov's neatly bound report on the table between us. It involves you and Mark and $200,000. Thomas froze, a forkful of my beef Wellington halfway to his mouth. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might actually pass out. He looked at the report like it was a cobra. The funny thing about wire fraud, I continued, my voice conversational and light, is that the federal government takes it so very seriously. I spoke with George. He seems to think a prosecutor would be very excited to see this. You'd lose your business, your license. You'd have to sell your beautiful house to pay me back. And then, of course, there's the whole prison aspect. I hear the food is terrible. He finally found his voice. It was a strangled whisper. What do you want, Ellie? I leaned forward. I want to own you. You are going to sign a confession. You are going to sign a promissory note with punitive interest to repay every single penny you stole, plus Mr. Petrov's fees. And then you're going to do exactly as I say. Your consulting firm now has one client, me. You're going to use your contacts to help me secure the European distribution rights for my new legacy line. You're going to work for me for free until I decide you're done. And if you ever breathe a word of this to anyone or fail to deliver on anything I ask, George will personally walk this file into the U.S. Attorney's office. Do we have an understanding? He just nodded, his eyes glassy with terror. He looked like a man who had just seen his entire life burned to the ground. He signed the papers I had ready right there at my dining room table. I didn't even let him finish his dinner. The next Monday morning, a single document was waiting for me on my desk. It wasn't from George or Mr. Petrov. It was a 12-page proposal, complete with process flowcharts and cost-benefit analyses. It was titled, Proposal for the Optimization of Warehouse and Shipping Logistics. The author was listed as Jennifer Vance, Logistics Coordinator, Night Shift. She had identified and solved a dozen problems I didn't even know we had. It was brilliant, it was thorough, and I had no idea what to do with it. Was this a genuine effort to contribute, or was it a Trojan horse, another more subtle attempt to prove her competence and my obsolescence? My gut, the one that built this company from a garage full of dusty antiques, was silent for the first time in years. On the third day, I sent a one-line email to Jennifer. My office, today, 4 p.m. I knew this would mean she'd have to leave her house hours before her night shift started, cutting into her only block of sleep. A small, petty test, maybe, but I wanted to see if she'd complain. She didn't. She replied in less than a minute. I'll be there. She arrived at 3:55 p.m., looking tired but alert. She wasn't dressed in her old power suits, but in simple black pants and a sweater. Her hair was pulled back. She looked like a worker, not an executive. She didn't sit down until I motioned her to. The old entitled Jennifer would have already been in a chair, crossing her legs, ready to do battle. I didn't offer her coffee. I didn't ask how she was. I tossed the proposal onto the coffee table between us. Walk me through the projected cost savings on page 9. Your math seems optimistic.
For the next hour, I grilled her. I was brutal. I picked apart every line item, every assumption. I questioned her sources, her projections, her implementation timeline. I was hoping to trip her up, to find the flaw, to expose the angle. But she never faltered. She knew every single detail, backward and forward. She wasn't just presenting a plan, she owned it. There was a spark in her eyes I hadn't seen since she was a college student acing her final exams. The spark of genuine passion for the work itself, not for the status it conferred. Finally, I leaned back. Why did you do this? I asked the question I really wanted to ask all along. She looked down at her hands for a moment before meeting my eyes. Her expression was stripped bare of artifice. For the first month, she began, her voice quiet but steady,
I hated you more than I've ever hated anyone in my life. Every night in that warehouse was like a prison sentence. It was cold, it was lonely. I just did the work, fueled by rage. She took a breath. But then a strange thing happened. After a while, the rage burned itself out. And for the first time in 20 years, it was just quiet. There were no meetings, no office politics, no egos to manage. Just me and the freight and the sound of the forklifts. And I started to see things. I saw where the delays were. I saw where money was being wasted on inefficient routes. I saw a dozen real problems, not the make-believe ones we'd been focusing on in our board meetings. And I realized I knew how to fix them. She looked at me and her eyes welled up, but the tears didn't fall. She didn't write this for you, Mom. I wrote it for me. It was the first time in my entire career that I felt like I had actually built something on my own instead of just inheriting a title. It probably doesn't matter to you. I understand why. But I had to do it. The full truth, the most shocking detail of all in this long, ugly story, wasn't the betrayal or the conspiracy. It was this raw and unvarnished confession. I had thrown her in the dungeon, and instead of rotting, she had drawn a map to a hidden treasure. My daughter, the schemer, had accidentally found her integrity. I didn't smile. I didn't soften. I was still the CEO, and she was still the employee who had tried to stab me in the back. The plan is sound, I said, my voice pure business. But your timeline is too slow and your budget is too high. I want a revised plan on my desk by Monday at noon. If it's good, you will be in charge of a pilot program to implement phase 1. You will report to me and you will do it on top of your current duties in the warehouse. Your success or failure will be entirely your own. Now get out. You have work to do. She stood up, a flicker of something. Disbelief, hope in her eyes. She just nodded, turned, and left my office. And Mark? While Jennifer was rediscovering her purpose, Mark was imploding. He failed to close a single new account in 3 months. He blamed the territory, the product, the economy, everyone but himself. The final straw came from Kevin, my IT guy. He detected a massive data download from Mark's computer in the middle of the night, our entire client database, supplier lists, and pricing structures. He was trying to steal my company from the inside out and sell the information. When I confronted him, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He was defiant. "You left me with nothing," he shouted, standing in the middle of my office. "What did you expect?" "I expected you, Mark, for once in your cosseted life to stand on your own 2 feet and earn your keep. But you can't, can you? It's not in you. Your only skills are smiling, cheating, and taking what you believe you're owed." I pressed a button on my desk. My assistant Carol and our head of security came in. "Mark Vance's employment with this company is terminated for cause, effective immediately. Please escort him from the building. He is not to touch his computer. His personal effects will be mailed to him."
He was stunned. He truly, honestly believed he was untouchable. As security led him away, he screamed at me, "I'm your son! You can't do this!" I stood by my window and watched them walk him out the front door and across the parking lot. My last words to him were ones he probably didn't hear. "I can, and I just did." That night, George filed the paperwork to permanently remove Mark from my will and all family trusts. I funded a new trust instead, an educational fund for my grandchildren, payable to them directly on their 18th birthdays. They wouldn't suffer for their father's sins, but they would never see a dime of it if it had to pass through his hands first. As for Thomas, his firm delivered the European distribution contracts on a silver platter. He's repaid nearly half the money he stole.
I hear his business is failing. I don't care. He's a ghost to me now. It's been a year. Vance Vintage Kitchens just had its most profitable quarter in history. Jennifer's logistics overhaul was so successful that I promoted her. She's not in operations anymore. She's the head of a new department she created, process and innovation. She still works grueling hours, but she's earning her keep. Our relationship isn't warm. We don't go to lunch or have cozy mother-daughter chats. But when we meet about the company, there's a quiet, shared respect. It's a start. As for me, I have never felt more alive. I feel like I've shed 100 pounds of dead weight. I come to work every day filled with a passion I thought had begun to fade. My children thought I was at the end of my story, but they were wrong. I was just at the start of my best chapter. They tried to take my legacy, but they only succeeded in cementing it. It's not a legacy of blood passed down to the undeserving. It is a legacy of merit, of strength, of a woman who built an empire and refused to let anyone, not even her own children, take it from her until she was damn well ready. And I'm not ready yet. Not by a long shot.
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.